Okay, here we're going to cut out the backrest from that basically block of wood, basically 3 by 9 inches that we put the maloof joint into. And we need to shape it. And this is pretty straightforward stuff. There's a couple of jigs I want to show you that I use. One for cutting that 15-degree angle you see there, and the second one for cutting that dado. Okay, here we're going to cut that 15-degree angle, which you can see I've drawn on the piece to be cut. And I'm going to use this general purpose table saw jig I have that uses my favorite dovetail clamps. This jig slides in the table saw miter saw slot, and the one edge slides exactly along the blade of the table saw. Therefore, if I line up the line on the piece with the edge of the jig, it will cut exactly along that line. And then these clamps are just great because they can hold little pieces really easily like this. So it's a great way to try to cut, especially a small piece like that has to be held in a certain way. Okay, and now here I've moved the jig over to the table saw and simply slide it through. Like I say, it's sliding in the miter slot, and it'll cut that right off. Now I'm using my dado blade to cut out that 3/8 inch deep by 3 inch long recess along the 15-degree line that I just cut. And this is going to be the area where the backrest will sit. And I'm using that same jig that I just used, but this time in conjunction with a fence that I have set perpendicular to the blade. And again, it serves to nicely hold this small, oddly shaped piece as I cut it. And I do about 5 passes to cut it all out. And note that it's important to start on the end and then work your way to the center with these cuts. Because if you do it the opposite way, you'll find it very difficult to properly clamp the piece on the last few cuts, something I learned the hard way. The next steps are straightforward, simply cutting out the rest of the shape on the bandsaw. And I've sped up the video here kind of crazy fast just for fun. And then just sand down to the line on the belt sander. And not a bad idea to wear gloves when you're working on a belt sander like this, because it kind of hurts if your fingers hit that sandpaper. Okay, here you can see we've got the 22-inch radius of what the backrest is going to be. And that doesn't exactly line up with this. It's because this is flat. It doesn't have a radius, but you can see it's really close. But it's not perfect, and actually, you could attach it as is, and it's good enough. I actually did that in the first chair I did. But to make a slight curve in this, what I've done is just put a tiny piece of sandpaper on this 22-inch radius template I've got here. And I'm just going to run that just a little bit right down the center of this. And, it doesn't take a whole lot. That I'll put a slight radius on it. Again, this isn't really essential, but it makes sense to do. You want to sand it a little bit smooth anyways, just to get a better glue joint. So you might as well sand it with something that's going to give it about the right radius. And that'll make it a little bit stronger, a little bit better fit. The final step then is to add a slight curve along the thickness of the stock, as shown by the pencil line here. And this was such a small amount of wood to remove that I didn't even bother cutting on the bandsaw, but just went straight to the belt sander, and it didn't take long. And here's after that final shaping. Finally, it came time to install the backrest supports in the seat. When I cut the maloof joints, everything was slightly oversized on the back side of the joint. So now I'm just marking them to trim them down. I sanded them down close to the line, then glued them in place in the seat, and then finally sand down everything nice and flush and smooth. And here's the final result.